The story of Greece is written not just in the words of its poets or the records of its kings, but in the very contours of its land and the endless blue of its surrounding seas. To understand the civilization that flourished on this rocky peninsula, we must first turn our eyes to its geography, a tapestry of mountains, valleys, islands, and coasts that shaped the destinies of its people for millennia. Greece lies at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa, a gateway between continents and cultures. Its mainland juts into the Aegean Sea, branching out into fingers of land known as peninsulas, most notably the Peloponnese. To the east, a scattering of islands forms stepping stones to Asia Minor, while the Ionian Islands to the west look toward Italy. This position, both central and isolated, made Greece a meeting point for ideas, goods, and peoples, yet also preserved its distinctiveness. But it is not merely Greece's position on the map that matters. It is the nature of the land itself. The Greek mainland is one of the most mountainous regions in Europe. Mountains dominate the landscape, their ridges running from northwest to southeast like the backbone of some ancient creature. Chief among them is Mount Olympus, shrouded in myth as the home of the gods, its peak rising nearly 3,000 meters above sea level. The Pindus Range cuts through the heart of the country, fragmenting the land into isolated valleys and plains. This rugged terrain profoundly influenced Greek civilization. Unlike the broad, open valleys of Egypt or Mesopotamia, where centralized kingdoms could flourish and rivers like the Nile provided a unifying thread, Greece's mountains acted as natural barriers. They divided the land into countless small regions, each with its own character, resources, and challenges. Travel by land was difficult. Communication between communities was slow and laborious. As a result, the Greeks developed fiercely independent city-states, or poleis, each proud of its autonomy, its customs, and its way of life. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. These names evoke not a single nation, but a patchwork of rival states, sometimes allying, often at odds. The very concept of the polis, the city-state, was a product of geography. Each city-state was centered on a defensible acropolis, a high place that could be fortified against attack. Surrounding it lay the fertile plains or valleys, limited in extent and hemmed in by hills, where the citizens grew olives, grapes, and grain. Beyond these, the mountains loomed, marking the boundaries between neighbors. Yet if the mountains divided, the seas united. Greece boasts an extensive coastline, deeply indented with bays, inlets, and natural harbors. In fact, nowhere in Greece is more than 50 miles from the sea. The Aegean and Ionian Seas, dotted with islands large and small, beckon to Greek sailors. For the ancient Greeks, the sea was not a barrier, but a highway, offering routes for trade, exploration, and colonization. The Greeks became skilled mariners, building sturdy ships to ply the waters between their islands and the shores of Asia Minor, Egypt, and beyond. Trade flourished, bringing wealth and new ideas. Grain, timber, metals, and luxury goods traveled by sea, along with pottery, olive oil, and wine produced by the Greeks themselves. This maritime connection fostered a spirit of curiosity and openness, encouraging contact with distant peoples and cultures. The interplay between land and sea shaped every aspect of Greek life. The lack of broad, navigable rivers meant that the Greeks looked outward rather than inward. Where the land was poor or crowded, the enterprising founded colonies throughout the Mediterranean, on the coasts of Italy, Sicily, North Africa, and even as far as modern-day France and Spain. These colonies spread Greek culture far and wide, but they also remained bound by ties of language, religion, and tradition to the homeland. Climate, too, played a role. Greece enjoys a Mediterranean climate, with hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters. The soil is often thin and rocky, ill-suited to large-scale agriculture. Yet the olive tree and the grapevine thrive here, and these became staples of the Greek diet and economy. Wheat, though less abundant, was supplemented by barley and other grains. Goats and sheep grazed on the hillsides, providing meat, milk, and wool. The sea supplied fish and shellfish, an important part of the diet for coastal communities. This environment fostered a sense of resourcefulness and self-reliance. The Greeks learned to make the most of what they had, to value moderation and ingenuity. Scarcity of resources encouraged exchange and interaction, but also competition and conflict. The quest for arable land and access to trade routes was a constant source of rivalry between city-states. Geography also influenced Greek religion and myth. The landscape was alive with stories. Mountains became the seats of gods, springs and caves the haunts of nymphs and spirits. The gods themselves reflected the land. Poseidon ruled the rolling sea, Demeter the fertile earth, Dionysus the wild hills where vines grew. Festivals and rituals were often tied to the cycles of nature, the changing seasons, the rhythms of planting and harvest. The isolation of the city-states, reinforced by geography, shaped Greek politics and culture. Each polis developed its own government, laws, and identity. In Athens, democracy emerged, shaped by the need for citizens to participate in the defense and administration of their small community. In Sparta, surrounded by hostile neighbors and reliant on a militarized society, a very different system took root. Elsewhere, oligarchies and tyrannies flourished. Yet, despite their differences, the Greeks shared a common language, religion, and sense of heritage. The mountains, while often barriers, could also serve as refuges. In times of invasion or war, people fled to the highlands, where they could resist for longer. The famous Battle of Thermopylae, where a small force of Greeks held off a vast Persian army, took place in a narrow mountain pass, a reminder of how geography could level the odds. The sea, for all its benefits, also brought dangers. Pirates and raiders prowled the coasts, storms could wreck ships and destroy harvests. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, reminders of the restless earth beneath, sometimes brought disaster to coastal towns and islands. Yet the Greeks learned to live with these risks, to respect the power of nature, and to weave its unpredictability into their worldview. Over centuries, the distinctive geography of Greece nurtured a civilization that was both unified and diverse. The legacy of the city-states, their fierce independence tempered by a sense of shared culture, laid the groundwork for achievements in philosophy, art, science, and politics that still resonate today. The competitive spirit fostered by scarcity and rivalry gave rise to the Olympic Games, a celebration of excellence and a rare moment of unity. The same geography that made Greece difficult to conquer also made it difficult to unify. The dream of a single Greek nation remained elusive until the rise of Macedon, when Alexander the Great, himself a product of the borderlands between Greece and the wider world, forged an empire that spread Hellenic culture to the ends of the known earth. Yet, even as empires rose and fell, the essential character of Greece endured, a land shaped by mountains and seas, by isolation and connection, by scarcity and ingenuity. The Greeks learned to adapt, to innovate, to draw strength from their environment. Their myths and histories are filled with tales of heroes who navigated treacherous waters, climbed forbidding peaks, and overcame the challenges of their land. In the end, the geography of Greece was not merely a backdrop, but a shaper of destiny. It molded the lives of its people, influenced their choices, and inspired their achievements. The interplay of mountain and sea, valley and island, created a world both challenging and beautiful, a world that gave birth to one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. Today, as we stand on the ancient stones of Athens or look out across the sparkling waters of the Aegean, we can still feel the presence of that geography. The mountains rise, unchanged, into the sky. The sea stretches to the horizon, inviting and mysterious. The land continues to shape the lives and dreams of its people, just as it did thousands of years ago. In every olive grove, every windswept hill, every harbor filled with fishing boats, the story of Greece's geography endures, a testament to the enduring power of land and sea to shape the course of civilization. For the Greeks, the mountains and the seas were not obstacles, but opportunities, a challenge to be met, a source of inspiration, and the foundation upon which they built their world.